In the sweltering heat of 1839 Georgia, a wealthy plantation mistress named Seraphina Dubois harbored a terrifying secret that whispered through the cotton fields. Every morning she summoned a strong young male slave to her private bathhouse, where she would bathe naked with him for hours in a steam-filled room. While she emerged flushed with stolen youth and vitality, the men would slowly wither away and die of a mysterious wasting sickness. What looked like a dark ritual of lust was actually a horrifying medical nightmare involving poisoned blood and a revenge plot decades in the making. In the shadowed, moss-draped corners of the Deep South, history is often written in the ledger books of commerce or the grand narratives of war. But there are other histories, whispered in the humid air of the back country, that speak of desperation, madness, and the terrifying lengths to which the human spirit will go to preserve itself. One such story, buried for over a century beneath the mud of the Georgia cypress swamps, is the tale of Willowshade Plantation and its mistress, Seraphina Dubois. It is a narrative that blurs the line between medical mystery and Gothic horror, a chronicle of a woman who sought to cheat death by consuming the lives of those she owned. The year was 1839, a time when medicine was a chaotic battleground between ancient folklore and emerging science. In the prestigious medical colleges of Boston, doctors debated the merits of bloodletting versus chemical cures. But in the isolated fringes of the Cotton Kingdom, cures were often sought in the earth, the water, and the dark superstitions that clung to the land like the ever-present miasma. It was into this world that Dr. Elias Thorne, a rational man of science from Boston, stepped when he accepted a commission to treat the mistress of Willowshade. Thorne had been hired by Seraphina's distant relatives in Savannah, who spoke vaguely of a debilitating nervous condition. He arrived expecting to treat a case of hysteria born of isolation. What he found was a plantation rotting from the inside out, presided over by a woman whose methods for preserving her own life had become a local horror story. Willowshade did not announce itself with white columns or manicured gardens. It emerged from the swamp as if the earth had reluctantly given birth to it. The silence was profound, broken only by the sawing of insects and the distant, unsettling cry of peacocks. The rumors surrounding Seraphina Dubois were fantastical, dismissed by sensible men as the gossip of field hands. They spoke of a mistress who was wasting away yet never seemed to die. They spoke of a plantation that did not trade in cotton, but in strong young men. And most disturbing of all, they spoke of the ritual she employed to keep death at bay. Every morning, just as the fever mists began to burn away, Seraphina would summon a new male slave to a hidden bathhouse, strip him of his clothes, and enter the water with him naked. When Dr. Thorne met Seraphina, the rumors seemed to pale against the reality. She was a woman of startling, repellent beauty, her skin stretched thin over a delicate bone structure, her eyes feverishly bright. She moved with a spectral lightness, a wraith wrapped in faded silk. She spoke openly to Thorne of her condition, dismissing his medical expertise. She claimed she was being consumed by the land itself, by a bleaching of vitality that had killed her father and grandfather. Her cure, she insisted, was metaphysical. Vitality must be replenished, life for life. For days, Thorne found himself a prisoner in a waking nightmare. He observed a terrifying pattern. In the mornings, Seraphina was a trembling invalid, barely able to speak. But after her daily ablutions in the stone bathhouse, she would emerge restored. Her cheeks would be flushed with color, her step firm, her voice steady. For a few hours, she appeared healthy. Then, as evening approached, the facade would crumble, and the wasting sickness would return. It was a daily cycle of decay and bizarre, unnatural restoration. Driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and growing horror, Thorne began to investigate. He turned his attention to the plantation's workforce, specifically the sick house. He expected to find the usual afflictions of field labor: dysentery, malaria, injury. Instead, he found a ward filled with young men, the strongest and healthiest on the plantation, all dying of the same rapid consumption. They lay on their cots, reduced to skeletons, their breath a shallow rattle. One dying man, Cato, whispered the truth to Thorn. "Since the bath," he gasped. "She takes it. She pulls it right out of your bones." Another slave, Amos, confirmed the horror. "We are the fuel," he wept. "We serve the mistress, and then we come here to die." Thorn realized he was not looking at a communicable disease, but the victims of a ritual. The progression of their illness was terrifyingly rapid, mimicking consumption, but accelerating it from years to weeks. Seraphina's fleeting vitality was not a delusion. It was a symptom of a direct, parasitic exchange. Determined to understand the mechanism of this vampirism, Thorn concealed himself near the bathhouse to witness the ritual. He watched as Jubal, the plantation's imposing and enigmatic administrator, prepared the bath with dark, herbal waters. He saw a young, terrified slave forced into the steam-filled room, followed by Seraphina. Peering through a crack in the stone foundation, Thorn witnessed a scene that would haunt him forever. Seraphina clung to the naked slave in the dark water, wrapping her skeletal limbs around him, pressing her wasting body against his. She remained motionless, absorbing his warmth, while Jubal chanted in a low, rhythmic drone and poured the toxic water over the man's head. It was a grotesque parody of an embrace, a predator feeding on its prey. As the hour passed, the man's strength visibly drained, his posture collapsing, while Seraphina bloomed with stolen health. Thorn knew this could not be magic. He was a man of the Enlightenment. He believed in chemistry, not spells. He broke into the bathhouse when it was empty and collected samples of the water, the herbs, and a strange grayish powder Jubal added to the mix. Back in his room, he performed a series of chemical tests. The result was shocking. The powder was antimony, a slow poison that, when administered in precise doses, produced symptoms almost identical to consumption. The pieces began to click into place. The slaves were being poisoned via steam and skin absorption during the baths. But this presented a paradox. Seraphina bathed in the same water. Why did she thrive while the men died? Thorn dug deeper, examining the residue from the bottom of the pool. Under his microscope, he found the answer: human blood. Further investigation revealed a hidden system of pipes leading from a cistern beneath the floor. The cistern was filled with gallons of blood, old, preserved, mixed with swamp water. Thorn realized the full extent of the horror. Jubal would bleed the slaves before the bath, filling the cistern. Seraphina was bathing in a diluted mixture of poison and blood, believing in a folklore cure that required the vitality of the strong. But the final twist was yet to come. Thorn realized that Seraphina's symptoms were real. She was not faking her illness. Yet, if the ritual was a sham, why was she sick? He deduced that Seraphina did not have consumption, nor was it a family curse. She, too, was being poisoned with antimony. The architect of this nightmare was Jubal. For 20 years, the administrator had been orchestrating a slow, meticulous revenge. He was poisoning his mistress to keep her sick and dependent on the cure, and he was murdering the slaves to feed her delusion that the transfer of vitality was working. It was a closed loop of destruction. When Thorn attempted to confront Jubal, the administrator revealed the final, devastating truth. The sickness of Willowshade was not just poison. It was tertiary syphilis, the great imitator. Seraphina's husband had infected them all, himself, his wife, and Jubal. The madness, the wasting, the sores, it was all the final stages of the disease. Jubal had simply guided Seraphina's madness, turning her desperate need for a cure into a weapon against the very system that had enslaved him. "I did not poison you, mistress," Jubal would later tell her. "I only guided your cure." The story culminated in a fiery inferno. Jubal, deciding that purification was complete, locked Seraphina inside the bathhouse and set it ablaze. Thorn, trapped in the cellar beneath, managed a miraculous escape by crawling through the blood-slick drainage pipe into the burning bathhouse and bursting out the door. He watched from the grass as Willowshade was consumed by flames, the slaves standing in silent witness as the symbol of their torment burned to the ground. Thorn fled into the swamp, the sole survivor who knew the full truth. But the world was not ready to listen. His accounts were dismissed as the ravings of a man maddened by smoke and trauma. He died in obscurity, his monographs on Southern miasmic hysteria gathering dust in a college basement. It wasn't until 1958 that historians, cross-referencing Thorn's papers with the oral histories of former slaves like Amos, pieced together the reality of Willowshade. The folklore was true. The vampire of Georgia was not a creature of myth, but a woman driven by disease and delusion, enabled by a man executing a revenge so patient and cold it defied understanding. Today, nothing remains of Willowshade but the dark waters of the swamp. The land has reclaimed the stone foundation and the charred timber. But the story survives, a chilling testament to the horrors of the past, reminding us that sometimes the true monsters are not supernatural, but deeply, tragically human.